Steve Mullen. I'm a web designer and I'm also a student. The Brown Review is considering recommending the cap on university tuition fees be lifted. This could mean fees in excess of about £10,000 per year, which will mean that overall student debt, whether you leave university, will be around about 50 to 100,000 depending on their course. If the government does decide to implement this, we vote against it, and we were urging other Liberal Democrat MPs to vote against it too.
Well, it was in our manifesto that we would get rid of tuition fees. I signed, along with nearly all the other Liberal Democrat MPs, a pledge to ensure that there would be no rises in tuition fees, the NUS pledge, and I stick by it. I certainly won't support it. The manifesto, the coalition agreement says that we can abstain. Well, I'll go on the record and saying I will not be abstaining. I would vote against such a move. However, it's important not to lose hope that it's even going to come that far. Vince Cable's done a lot of work in trying to make sure that we potentially could scrap tuition fees and replace them with, you know, a graduated graduate contribution. Now, personally, I was the last generation that got free access to higher education. You know, I got a grant. And there were no loans and there were no fees. And I wonder whether someone from my background today would make the choices that I did, knowing that you'd be incurring a 20, 30 grand debt to do so. And I have to say, to go back to the previous question, you know, one of the reasons I think we ended up in the credit crunch is because we made large debt seem normal to a new generation. You know, if you've left college owing 20 grand, what's 5 grand on a credit card on top of all that? You know, and it encourages a culture of indebtedness. So, I mean, I want to get rid of upfront fees of any kind whatsoever. And I'm hopeful that whatever the Brown Review says, that the coalition government will come forward with something a lot more progressive, which means, you know, if you are a youth worker on 17 grand at the moment, you're paying the same fees as a banker on $500,000. And that's wrong. It's a poll tax on education. So if we've got to have some kind of charge at all, it's got to be based on ability to pay and what income you have at that particular point. It's also going to be time limited. It's not going to be a tax that you pay until you stop paying tax. It's got to be limited to the same number of years that fees are currently payable. And I say all this very apologetically because I'd like to get rid of it altogether. The problem is we've been left such a mess, we have to find some way of paying for it.
At some point in the future, would you like, if presumably the country can afford it, would you like to see free higher education again?
I would. I think that what we've done, we've made various positive steps forward in terms of higher education over the last 20 years and some negative ones. And what we've done is we've expanded higher education hugely, but made it a lot more expensive. And we have made a lot more, many more families buy into the whole idea of education beyond 16, which is actually really, really positive. It's important we don't, you know, I don't go with this kind of Mickey Mouse degree nonsense that people have a go at the universities over. What I am concerned, though, is that we haven't properly integrated engineering and the kind of manufacturing professions into higher education. The real problem in this country is that we're massive snobs. And we look at things you do with your hands and things you do with your head and your mouth as being totally separate. And actually, you know, we ought to be integrating those things. Engineering should be seen as a hugely esteemed profession. And so there's all sorts of things out there which might be apprenticeships or more vocational courses of study that we ought to be badging as university. And as a result, we could then get in a lot more university cash into the university, industry cash rather, into the university system. So there are ways of making sure it can pay for itself. I would hate to think that we were going to have a contraction on student numbers now. We have to be clever and make sure that we're educating people for the jobs we need, but also stop compartmentalising people. You know, you either do Latin or you do woodwork, and that's the nonsense that we're still living in this country. And you know, truly comprehensive education, which I genuinely believe in, has to be just that. You know, why can't you have philosopher plumbers? And we don't have them in this country, and we need them.
There seems to be a lack of planning. You know, for instance, the university should be told we need, in so many years, we need 500 engineering students or so many psychologists. I think that planning is missing. People go to university because they like to take a subject, and there's nothing there at the end. that is something which
Well,
will be addressed.
I think it's critically important. I mean, if you look at whatever you think of wind turbines and wind power, the worst thing about wind power, I would say, is that we don't make any of the stuff in this country. And we don't make any of the stuff in this country because, as you rightly pointed out, there's no planning ahead. In the 70s and in particular in the 80s, when we had the chance to grow our own industry here, we let it go. So we import them all now. And the same is the case today, I would say, with the low energy lighting sector. We are in a position to become the international leaders on that front, but we're not backing our own businesses. And I'm not actually, obviously I'm not a free marketeer, but I'm not an unbridled free trader. I think, you know, protectionism isn't a good thing, but backing your own industry is a good thing. And you've got to invest in those skills for the future. You've got to see what's coming and meet them and meet those needs. And higher education is going to be part of that.
It's common sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, mentioning about education.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and this is my suggestion, you know, that
Yeah.
we should have a children's trust. We should have community trust, whereby students and community can participate and mentor and shadow each other, so that students can get real training and experience, which
Yeah.
we are lacking.
Yeah.
I qualified recently with heavily subsidized by Lancashire County Council
Yeah.
as a social worker.
Yeah.
And what happened? I'm on a scrap heap now. All the money wasted.
Yeah.
I've got a lot to contribute to the community,
Yeah.
and not only to the community but young people
Yeah.
with positive ideas.
Yeah.
But like you suggested about planning, there's no planning, no
No.
consultation with the community.
No.
So like Children's Trust,
Yeah.
we should have Community Development Foundation Trust, whereby the council and the community can get together
Yeah.
and help to promote, instead of just
Yeah.
at the moment the monopoly is with the university. In
Yeah.
Preston, the university is doing extremely well,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
But the community is out.
Yeah. You have to be able to buy into, I mean, you've got a higher education establishment on your doorstep, you know, it's got to be, you know, part of the community. Absolutely critical that it is, for all sorts of reasons. But I mean, you're very blessed here having a big get up and go university. But the connection with the community in terms of higher education is very important on another level, which is you want people to leave with skills they can actually apply. And one of the problems very often is that you will spend, you know, three years on a degree course, or 4 years, and very little of that time will be spent out in the field doing the things that your job is going to be about. Social work's probably one of the sort of exceptions, because you do a reasonable amount of placement work out there. But you know, the old language was day release. And that's the wrong way of looking at it, you know. That's the right way of looking at it. You're a day released from work to college, as opposed to being released from college to work. And that's absolutely critical that, you know, we have higher education that meets the needs of the community, business community, but also the wider community.
Because that links quite rightly with the social enterprise, you know, which
Yeah.
the government wants to promote.
Yeah.
And that's the center of the left or right thinking, you know, and this is what, you know, we should be
Yeah,
supporting.
we shouldn't get hung up about that sort of stuff, really. I mean, you know, here, big society and social enterprise, you can get yourself a little bit, you know, shiver goes down your spine. But actually, going back to, you know, why I joined as a Liberal as a 16-year-old, and why many of you got involved in the first place, those of you who've been around a little while, at least for sure, it's community politics. It's about making sure that you're not telling people on top what to do, you're giving them the chance to kind of rise up from the grassroots. Of course, the danger is that if you're entirely reliant upon volunteers, then, you know, you're in a position where you're really handing control of your society over to a handful of people who may already have the wherewithal and the time on their hands. And in a rural area like mine, where half the people are retired, that's fine. In other places, it won't work so well. So we've got to make sure that when we're talking about social enterprise and big society, that we're not allowing the ideology to get in the way of actually serving people and giving them the best possible services on the ground. And the danger, I think, I am an ideologue, I'm a believer, I'm an idealist, but I'm not a dogmatist. I think it's about making sure that what works in a local community is what we do.